Hey there, and welcome back. And if you're new, welcome in. So today I'm pretty much going to be talking about Eula and her kit and a few team comps you're capable of doing. So let's just get right into it. So I'll start from pretty much talents up to weapons. So first, her talents. When it comes to talent priority, you normally want 1, her normal attack, 2, her burst, and 3, her skill. Although her skill is still pretty important, so you want to level it up to a decent amount. I'm gonna say like 8 minimum, just in case you have her. Which honestly, it's really good. When it comes to her normal attack, she does 5 consecutive attack or consecutive strikes, I should say. Which honestly, it's pretty nice. But then between hit number 4 and 5, there's like a semi long animation, so you usually want to do 4 hits, like dash cancel, and then do 4 hits again. But that is more important towards her burst, which we will now be moving into. So whenever her burst, now we'll go to for skill. We'll go down. So for her skill, pretty much she's capable of, she'll be slashing, or she'll just swing normally. She'll attack the enemy, and then she's going to be doing cryo damage, which Eula then gains a stack on Grim Heart, which is capable of stacking up to 2 times. And you'll see how many. You'll see the stack you have based on the little sword she has, because it doesn't show. Oh well, it's fine. Normally, a little sword symbol is going to show on top of her head, which honestly, after what, 1 stack, and then you decide to hold it, that little sword that was shown up top actually forms, drops down, and does additional physical damage. But you usually want to have 2 stacks, which then does like a little mini burst, which honestly, it's pretty cool. So it's like a mini nuke before the big nuke comes. That's why you usually want to have 2 stacks, although normally you just have to do 1 hit with the skill, and then you can just activate the burst. And that is thanks to this. Oh wait, my bad. This one right here. So the moment you do a skill and then you activate her burst, with this passive, well this talent, pretty much, it automatically resets the cooldown for her skill, which then, on top of that, whenever you do her burst, you gain a stack for her skill, which with this then allows you to then just hold this and do the mini burst while you're stacking for the main burst. And for the main burst, you end up grabbing this little sword symbol that's shown, ends up forming around either top left or top right of her. And pretty much the burst, it's simple. You can just ignore all this. I'll just simplify it. Although you usually want to have Eula's burst to be the last of, at the very end of the rotation. So I'll explain why. So pretty much when you're doing her burst, you usually want to do a skill first, then her burst, then you automatically have 2 stacks for her skill due to the Wellspring. And how her burst is, a little sword is formed either on the left or right side, like I mentioned. However, the more hits you're able to land on the enemy, the more stacks this burst gets. The more stacks the burst gets, the bigger this sword becomes. So at first it's small, but the more stacks you get, the bigger it becomes, and then eventually it becomes a full-size sword, which honestly, pretty cool. And the bigger the sword, the bigger the damage. So the more hits you land, the bigger the sword gets. The bigger the sword gets, the bigger the damage. However, the reason why I said you usually want Eula to be the last one is due to this last part. If she leaves the field, the sword will immediately explode. So let's say you didn't get full stacks, you hit the enemy like 3 times, but then you mess up the rotation and you switch to someone else. Boom. Right there, the burst just ends, does the damage, but it's not going to do as much damage compared to her being the last one and getting all the stacks possible. That's why you usually want to have her last. As for this one, pretty much whenever she has both stacks for her, technically, skill, where is it? There we go. After holding it, they will deal what 50% of the physical base physical damage dealt created by what this. So pretty much with this, your skill is capable of doing 50% of the just normal, not the stacked version, just the normal. So let's say you stack up your skill to the maximum, which is 2 stacks, and then you use it. It's equal to just the moment you just activate your burst and just let it. You switch to Eula, do your burst, you switch out, and it just implodes. It's going to be that base damage. It's not going to be the stackable damage, which kind of sucks, unfortunately. But if it was the stackable damage, it'd be a whole lot better. I could be completely wrong, but that's how I've understood it since I've been playing her this entire time. But then again, keep in mind, there's always new things I'm capable of learning, even with this character that I've been using forever. Now, for constellations, C0 is phenomenal, although C1 is a good stopping point since she's capable of doing her physical damage is increased by 30% for 6 seconds, and for each stack consumed and for each stack you get, it increases that 6 seconds to 18 seconds maximum. And the way you're able to get pretty much the stacks is from the icicle one. So this from her skill. So whenever you do the skill and then you attack and then skill again for those stacks, you're increasing her damage, which honestly, or the duration of how much, for how long the little physical damage boost is increased by, which is honestly pretty cool. C2, it's like a little boost. It's not recommended, but it's still pretty good due to the fact that it reduces the cooldown for the hold mode. So right here, we'll go to the skill, and right here, in the bottom, the press cooldown is 4 seconds. However, the hold cooldown is then 10 seconds. However, with C2, that 10 seconds is converted to 4 seconds, which honestly can pretty much just be pretty useful in certain scenarios where you want to do more damage really fast. And obviously, the more stacks you have, like I mentioned, it's a mini nuke. So the moment you have 2, you do a skill, burst, then hold, and then it's still on the 4 seconds. So you're then able to attack 4 consecutive times. Keyword, when doing the burst, sorry, I'm going back and forth. When doing the burst, you usually want to attack 4 times, then the skill. You want to hold it though. And then after that, you attack 4 times again to then get more stacks. And by the time you're done with the, 8 normal attacks, and then her skill attack, 9 hits technically, that's when her burst duration should be ending or close to ending. Because depending on the characters that you have, like Mika, who's capable of boosting her attack speed, she'll be able to squeeze in a few more hits. Which this, with with the skill cooldown, you're capable of doing 4 consecutive attacks, skill, and then you do 4 consecutive attacks again. By the time you're done with the 4th consecutive attack, you're able to do the skill again, which then allows you to squeeze in a few more stacks for the burst, which is really nice. Like I mentioned, bigger sword, bigger number. Although C3, you don't really need it. It just increases her burst damage, which is pretty neat. As for C4, it's kind of useless unless you're fighting either in the Abyss or a weekly boss, since the swords that she's crafting get an additional damage boost for enemies with 50% less of their HP, but chances are the moment you shave off like 10%, no, I'm gonna say like 20, you're around 70. By the time you unleash one of her skills, they're just gonna die. So it's like C4 is not that good in my opinion. So C2 is currently the C1 best. C2 debatable. It's just a nice increase in life quality. C4 not really recommended. C5 increases her skill damage, although C6, if you're gonna go all out, go all the way until C6. Don't stop at C5. The only reason I stopped at C5 was because I ended up losing the last 50-50 I was capable of wishing for. And then I was like, oh, I'll just get her in her next banner. Her next banner didn't come until like practically a year and a half, or a little over a year and a half. So I kind of messed myself over there. However, when it comes to her C6, she automatically has 5 stacks on her burst straight off the bat. So instead of saying, let's say you have 9 hits already, due to doing the 4 consecutive, the skill, and then 4 more consecutive, that's 9. You gain a 5 additional stack energies, which then goes from 9 to 14, which then allows your burst to do even more damage. And on top of that, her normal attack, skill, and elemental burst has a 50% chance of granting a light sword with an additional stack of energy. So pretty much it's it's just a giant damage boost, which I regret not. I should have just gotten it. But anyways, aside from that, that's pretty much for Constellation. C0, good. C1, good stopping point. C2, an arguably good stopping point. And after that, C3, 4, and 5, kind of not really worth it until you go to C6. Now for the artifact sets. When it comes to the artifact sets, Pale Flame, best in slot. You usually want a 4-piece set. But let's say your 4-piece set is like, the subsets aren't the best. You can, instead of having the full 4-piece set, you can have a 2-piece set, Pale Flame, my bad. And then for the second one, it's going to be the Bloodstain, which does an additional 25% damage, which is honestly kind of better at times, since what, you get a 50% boost, physical damage boost straight off the bat compared to a 25. So let's say you don't have good artifacts, a 2-piece, and then you can probably have like an off-piece set like somewhere here. Normally it's going to be like the Goblet, but let's say you got lucky with the Goblet with the physical piece. It's just going to be phenomenal. So for the pieces for the artifact, it's going to be HP always and attack. For the sands, you always want attack. For the Goblet, you always want physical. You can probably go for attack if you have the 2-piece, since you're already going to be getting a 50%, an additional 25% boost to physical damage. But even then, physical is still recommended. However, for the circlet, you usually want crit rate, unless the substats constantly boost crit rate but not crit damage. That's when you'll, in those rare occasions, you'll want crit damage. But it's like, chances are you're gonna be going with crit rate majority of the time. Now for her weapons, best in slot, Song of Broken Pines, which honestly I was able to snipe it before they added the sword pity which is, I forgot what it's called, which honestly I got pretty lucky. However, another good 5-star option is Red Horn, which due to the crit damage that it boosts. Although right here it does an additional 20%, which is another reason why it's her best in slot. And on top of that, the little passive thing is pretty much increases her normal attack and charge attacks, which for every hit technically you gain this seagulls. Pretty much, I'm just gonna call it a whispers. You gain pretty much, you're capable of getting 4 whispers, and for each 4 whispers increases her normal attack speed by 12% and increases her attack by 20%. That's with the maximums, by the way. Otherwise it's just going to be like a 16 to attack, and then eventually you'll get the 12% boost to attack speed. But Red Horn, it's good, but it's mostly just for crit damage, because the passive, it just increases her defense and then her normal charge attack based on her defense, but you don't really want defense, you usually want attack. Another good 5-star option is this one, due to it's being similar to another weapon, which I'm gonna mention after this before I jump to Skyward. But it's good since the attack itself is going to be pretty high, and then it has a substat of attack as well, so that's an additional attack speed or attack boost. And let's say you have a shielder, this then increases that shield's duration, or strength I should say, by an additional 20%. And pretty much on top of that, after hitting the pretty much the opponents, her attack is increased by 4% for 8 seconds. The maximum stacks, so 5, so that's an additional 20% to attack. Although it could only happen, what, every 0.3 seconds. And on top of that, if you have a shielded character with this sword, she gets an additional 100% boost to her attack as well. So it's like, if you have this sword, you usually want someone who's capable of giving her a shield. If not, then you usually gonna use the middle part of it, which is gonna be the increase to attack. Now, another good weapon that's similar to this one, although the refinement rank or the refinement skill in a sense is going to be different. It's going to be Wolf's Gravestone, which honestly has a higher, I believe, a higher attack base and a higher sub stat attack percentage. And on top of that, it pretty much whenever you hit an opponent, your attack is increased, which is similar to the second passive, but I don't think the Wolf Gravestone stack is, or attack increase is small. I'm pretty sure it's like, what, I think a 20% straight off the bat, which is honestly pretty cool. Now, I don't have it, so I can't really show it, so that's all I can say about it. It's just a really good weapon. Honestly, probably the second best if you don't have the Song of Broken Pines. However, another good weapon is Skyward Pride, since it does additional pretty much damage, and on top of that, after using the burst, has this little, it does like a vacuum blade that does 100% damage. Well, not 100% damage, it does additional damage, which usually you want to just do normal attacks, then burst, which then you're capable of proccing this, which then allows you to do more damage on top of it. And it has energy substat, so it helps with her energy particles, since you usually want about, I'm gonna say 125 minimum of energy recharge, so you can have a good amount of burst time. But even then, it's good, but not really good. As for the 4-star options, pretty much Snow Tombed. It's a craftable. You just have to do a side quest in Dragonspine, which honestly, the moment you get it, it's pretty nice. So you're able to refine it pretty easily. You just need to grab the materials, which are also in Dragonspine, and then you could just refine it, and then you get these bonuses. Because I forgot what it was when in base kit, but after refinement 5, you have your normal attacks and charge attacks have a 100% chance of forming an icicle. It's pretty much like her skill, but just as a sword passive, which if you stack it on top of hers, it's pretty cool too. And that sword deals pretty much AoE damage equal to 140% of the attack, which would be her attack, which honestly, another reason why you want a lot more attack on her than like any of the other two. You usually want to attack higher, as high as possible. HP is pretty good, and then defense is kind of last. But aside from that, it also deals additional damage if they are afflicted with cryo, which chances are you usually want another character that's capable of applying cryo. Let's say you don't have this sword because you're too, like, you just couldn't find the little side quest, or you didn't want to do it, or you didn't know of its existence. Another good option is Favonius, which also helps with energy recharge, which I believe has a higher one than Skyward. Yeah, it has a higher Skyward, less attack though, but with pretty much its passive, for every crit hit, you have a 100% chance of generating particles, which then allows her to have her burst uptime even better. So chances are you're probably going to have her burst near the end of her cooldown, which then allows you to do her burst again, which to deal another nuke version of damage, which honestly, it's really good. As for the team comps, it's pretty simple. Mika's pretty good, but let's say you don't have him, you can swap him out for someone else that's capable of healing the team. Or just, you can probably have a shielder like Zhongli. If you don't have Zhongli, you can go with Diona. If you don't have Diona, who's also capable of afflicting cryo, you're capable of going with Noelle, which honestly, she's phenomenal. But aside from that, Mika's good, but you're able to replace him with those other options. Rosaria, honestly, she's probably a really good character to always have on pretty much on Eula's team due to the fact that although it kind of sucks, it's behind C6 though. But at C6, whenever she uses her burst, it shreds the pretty much physical resistance of the enemy by 20%, which then allows Eula to do more damage. It kind of sucks that it's behind C6, but it's like, hey, kind of to be expected. It's a gacha game. But aside from that, Rosaria, you usually want her in the team majority of the time. As for the final slot, you can have the Electro character to do the superconduct reaction, which then that shreds the enemy's physical resistance even more. So for the options, you have Cookie. So let's say you don't have Mika to not only boost her attack speed but also heal. You have Cookie, who's capable of not only having the little ring that does electro damage to then do the superconduct reaction, she also heals the person that's currently on the field, which chances are majority of the time is going to be Eula. Another good option is Raiden. Just press E, swap out to everyone else, and boom, you're set. And then you can just swap back before the cooldown ends. And then if you have her last, so let's say you do the support and sub DPS burst, and then you go with Eula's burst. For every burst done, Raiden's pretty much her burst is increased due to her little skills circle E. It's like, what's it called? It forms a little ring. Pretty much the eye of the storm. And for every time they use a burst skill, it gains a stack, which then makes her attack stronger. And whenever she uses her burst, it allows her teammates to then regenerate energy for their burst. So if she has a decent amount of energy, same with the rest of the party members, she's capable of, by the end of their rotation, the moment she does her burst, you should be capable of having everyone else's burst ready by that time. But let's say you don't have Raiden or Cookie. Another really good option, Facial. Since chances are she's been here since, I believe, the beginning of the game. And let's say chances are you do get Facial. Every constellation for Facial is extremely good, especially C6, due to the fact that it allows Oz, her skill slash also bursts by the time she's at the end of her burst, she kind of just drops down Oz. And Oz constantly does electro damage, which then infuses the enemies with electro. That's where Rosaria comes in to do the cryo damage to then activate superconduct. And on top of that, she's a really good battery too. So she's somewhat similar to Raiden, but just not as much energy is pretty much formed compared to Raiden, since Raiden is the embodiment of a battery that's capable of doing damage, while Facial herself is just a small, it's like a downgraded version of Raiden, but she's a 4-star, so it's kind of to be expected. But honestly, that's about it. You can probably have Beto. So let's say you have Beto, and then you can pair Eula, and then for the weapon, you don't have this, you can end up going with the Unforged. Because Beto's burst gives her a shield, which does electro damage too. So if you have this, it further boosts the pretty much the shield, which then allows you to not be staggered as much, which honestly, it's pretty cool. But that's about it. Is Eula good? Yes. Is she capable of comparing with the current meta? Probably not, but she's still capable of holding her own. So, honestly, I do recommend her, but if you don't want her, that's also fine. But just keep in mind, it might be like, I don't know, 6 years from now where her next banner drops. So, just keep that in mind. Am I trying to gaslight you to get her? Maybe. Do I like her? Yes. Is this somewhat biased? Yes. But I will also be telling you, if you're into like the meta, I don't recommend her. Because like I mentioned, she kind of falls behind when it comes to the meta, since she just needs physical damage, no reactions aside from superconduct, which she herself is not really doing. It's mostly her teammates that are doing it. But that's about it. So if you ended up enjoying this little rant slash educational video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. Really helps out the channel. And till next time, later nerds. Take care.